Live on WFLA Now. Feel good and live your best life with Bloom Health Club. Here's Gail Guayardo.
Hello, everyone. They are calling it the second brain. We're talking about our guts. And joining us now is longevity dietitian and gut health expert and the author of Healthy Cooking for High Performers, Ella Davar. Ella, welcome to Bloom Health Club.
Thank you for having me, Gail.
And we're also going to have Brody Waddell. He is our digital reporter and producer for Bloom Tampa Bay. I know you guys worked on a story on this very subject together. This is a really interesting one because, Ella, I don't think a lot of people realize that so much of our health is directed by our guts.
Yeah, so you are what you eat. You've probably heard this oversimplified statement before, and it's actually true. But there's a lot of processes that go on underneath our skin and inside our bodies from the moment we take a bite of our deliciously favorite cake or whatever that is that we're eating. And then when we swallow it, and then it hits our stomach. And from there, it gets into our intestines where it sits for 18 to 24 hours. And guess what happens to it? At this point, it's not a cake, it's a chime. And it has the potential to contribute to the overall gut microbiome, everything that's going on inside of our gut. And with that, it has the potential to make us feel a certain way because our gut microbiome is responsible for breaking the nutrients down, for absorbing, doing a good job at it without you ever thinking about it, absorbing all the nutrients and creating those neurotransmitters, hormones, nutrients, and molecules that affect our well-being.
Yeah, I mean, even our immune systems are linked to our gut. So if you're like chronically sick, you might have issues going on with your gut health. And I think what's so interesting is your backstory. You didn't start off as a dietitian. I know that you've been doing this many, many years with a specialty in gut health, and you're out with a book for high performers, people like yourself that are busy and out there. But you became sick, and this became your passion.
Yes, and I tried every diet. I thought, it's someone else knows more than I do myself. So I used to be vegan at some point. I tried Ayurvedic diets, macrobiotic diets, all these trendy names, keto and Ayurvedic, and none of them helped me until I started really to pay attention to myself and to start drawing wisdom and knowledge from inside, from how my body is feeling, based on my unique bioindividuality, how my body responds to certain foods and how it's doing without other foods. And with that, I actually changed my whole career. I've only been a dietitian for 10 years. And before that, I had a career on Wall Street. And, I became a dietitian to solve my own health issues. Because when I was doing all those dieting and exercising, no matter what I was doing, I still felt bloated. I still felt, that I was not able to lose weight the way I wanted. So, for me, becoming a dietitian was to solve my own health issues. And with that, I was able, to help so many other people who were struggling with the same things.
Yeah, people don't realize how much of your health is linked to your gut. I've shared this with you, and I've shared it with our Bloom Health Club listeners and viewers so many times that I was dealing with really severe thyroid issues. I was losing my hair. I couldn't lose weight. I could be at the gym every day of the week and not shed a pound. And I was on a prescription medication. They just kept upping it. Nothing was helping me. It wasn't until I got my gut health in check. And I wouldn't say I'm 100% there, which is going to lead us to our next conversation because Ella.
You're getting there.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Baby steps, because we will be talking a little bit about poo, so brace yourself. But, you don't treat each client the same. Like, you really want to know what's going on and what you're dealing with before you come up with an eating plan.
Yeah. So, the first consultation is always I go over the eating plan, which is anti-inflammatory diet that I believe everyone should know about and should be able to incorporate into their daily lifestyle, even with their food preferences or busy lifestyle, even if they don't cook. But then, of course, the personalization of my protocol depends on what's really going on inside your gut and what your body needs to tell us. So one of the comprehensive analysis that I do for my clients is a stool test, and it really is life-changing. When I met you and I, look at you and you're so way out there, doing everything you preach here on the podcast, And when you said you've never done a stool test, I was like, I know it's going to change your life. It's going to change your relationship with your gut, with your digestion, and bring more mindfulness into it and more specific approach to the way you treat it. So, when it comes to supplements, it really matters why you're taking them and what your body needs or what it doesn't need. And without testing what's going on inside your digestive health, you can't ever tell.
Well, I was on YouTube just last night because I'm like, okay, I got the kit in the mail. I got on Ella hooked me up with the company. They drop ship a kit. I'm like, oh, okay. I have to be 14 days with no probiotics. And I'm like, that's cool. So then I'm like, and then I start digging deeper. I'm like, no probiotics, getting ready to take it. They're like, no laxatives. And I'm like, oh, well, I was taking I got a little stopped up. I took a little laxative. I know this is too much information, Brody, but you're going to have to work with me on it.
All kinds of stuff.
So I'm like, all these things that you can't do. And so, okay, finally my system is clear. I've got all the things that you're supposed to have out of your system, out of my system. And then I come down with a little cold. And as I'm watching this YouTube guy talking through how to take the stool test, and no, he did not really do stool, but he just was kind of walking you through the kit. He's like, no acetaminophen. And I had just taken Tylenol. And so I'm like, So I have I think probably a few more days before I take it. Mm-hmm. It is a process, and you're only having me do the 1-day kit.
Yes.
Some people have to do this for 3 days. 3 days. Fortunately, Ella's cutting me some slack, and I'm going to do the 1-day kit. And what will you be able to learn about me? Because truth be told, I eat super clean. I am not a heavy drinker. I exercise all the time. I'm super hydrated, but I still have all these stomach issues. I mean, not a ton, but some.
That's what we're going to analyze. So there's 5 different factors that create optimal gut health. Number 1 is microbiome. We talked about it earlier on the show, and microbiome is a total makeup of bacteria. And guess what? You'll have multiple pages on your bacteria, and we'll see which one you don't have enough of, which one you have too much of, and that could be the issue. Why are you feeling a certain way? And some people experience different symptoms, whether it's diarrhea, constipation, or feeling bloated. That could be dependent on that. And with that, we're creating a protocol on how to treat it. Maybe there's a certain probiotic strain that you need, or maybe you need to stop certain probiotic because that could be the reason why you feel bloated, because you have an overgrowth of bacteria. And that's just one aspect when we're testing for the actual microbial makeup, which is called microbiome. And when there's an imbalance of microbiome, it's called dysbiosis. So when there's a negative balance, and the bad bacteria overgrow the good ones. So that's what we're testing for.
So will you be changing the foods I eat or supplements, or what happens?
Both. It could be if it's not enough with healthy gut microbiome, specific probiotic strains such as inulin, prebiotic supplements, or fiber supplements, or more different types of fiber. We'll go over your food intake and what you're eating and what you could be eating more of. For some people, it's pomegranate seeds. Yes, for others, it's more of beans and lentils. For others, it could be just a few supplements of inulin or apple pectin, those things. And that's just one thing for microbiome. And then we also test for infections. We mentioned earlier, parasitic infections. You'll be surprised. This is something that we never guess. And I shared earlier how not everyone has them, but some people do. So that's what we'll be testing to see if you have, yeast overgrowth or parasitic infections. With that, it could also could be an indicator of your energy levels. Very often, skin issues and energy levels are correlated with the infections that we have in our gut. Then we're also testing for enzymatic sufficiency, whether your body is able to digest certain nutrients, because very often we take all those healthy foods or supplements and we're not able to break them down and absorb. But again, this is very specific. That's why you don't hear me talking about it on Instagram and social media, because some people don't need to take enzymes. They're perfectly fine, and other people do.
Now, will you be able to tell what foods disagree with me? Because I know food sensitivity is another big issue that you talk about. So that's a whole different test.
That's a blood panel.
Okay.
So that's testing for antibodies in your bloodstream, which are your body is reacting to. So that's like autoimmunity. And when your body is basically reacting itself, and that creates a chronic or low-grade inflammation. And there's 3 types of antibodies, IgA, IgG, and IgG4. And those are the one that we test, but those from your blood. You got a kit for that as well.
Oh, I did?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know I got a kit for that.
I shipped it to you. Yeah.
Oh, did you? That kit did not arrive because I was just about to ask you why you thought that I should do the stool test in lieu of the blood test, but you say both.
Both, yes. And what's awesome about that approach and this method that I created is that, when we create like a personalized nutrition protocol based on your food sensitivities and tolerance, you eliminate certain foods that disagree with you and you instantly feel better. But the bad news is, the approach that we usually have, the elimination diet, that you can never have them. And very often those are common foods like dairy, gluten, and some of the proteins from different foods. And what we do is when we improve your gut microbiome, we improve your body's ability to tolerate those foods and to stop autoimmunity. Yes. And
wow. So you mean you don't have to
to
stop eating them forever?
That's the goal.
Wow.
That's the goal with improving and creating an optimal gut health, with being able to digest, absorb nutrients, and therefore eat whatever, and being able to absorb and digest all of the foods.
How is your tummy, Brooke? I'm sorry, Brody. The cold medicine's getting to me. My apologies. Right. Actually, Brody and I have worked together a long time, as you know. Yeah. Brody, do you have stomach issues?
It really depends. I find that I like to fast a lot of the time.
You do?
I get my best sort of like health from fasting. And
that's
so,
part of the recommendation when it comes to improving gut microbiome, by the way.
Yeah, and I've noticed a big difference with that, and that's something I wanted to speak to you about. But I really only tend to get issues like if I have like a lot of caffeine on an empty stomach, or I'm taking other stuff, or it might maybe getting anxious, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it'll disagree with me. But for the most part, my stomach is pretty good.
You can eat anything?
Yeah, like to a degree. I always used to joke that I have like an iron stomach, like I don't really get acid reflux.
And you know what? I believe him.
Yeah.
You do?
I've tested a lot of young people in their 20s, and guess what? Most of them are
nothing.
Nothing. And it's when we get older, and that's when we
see. I feel like I've been high maintenance forever when it comes to my stomach, and maybe because, to be honest with you, and I'm not just saying this, I have been nuts over health and food before it was even a thing. Like back in the day, Tampa only had one, and if you're old school Tampa, you'll know what I'm talking about. We only had one nutrition place, and it was called Bertha's. And Bertha's is where you went for all the knowledge. She was just this older woman. She was like a walking encyclopedia about gut health, the foods you should be eating. And there was one other doctor that was really in. She was Mary Beeson, Dr. Mary Beeson from California. Not a lot of education back in the day about what we should be eating and how we should be treating our gut. But now it's all that anybody ever even talks about.
Right.
So, I mean, it is like the go-to if you want to get your health back on track.
That's what changed my life. And that's what helps me to bring a lot of awareness about healthy eating. So a lot of people, when they think, oh, I eat healthy, I'm fine, right? But then there's nagging symptoms like bloating, like indigestion or heartburn or skin rashes. And a lot of people start to realize that actually it does have a lot to do with the things that I eat. And when they do experiment with those things, they see the difference. And that gives, especially the younger population group, gives them more incentives to give healthy eating a try, and instead of waiting until they get older and do all the damage and then begin their journey.
Preventative.
Yeah. What about people that are gassy? Is that an indicator?
Very often, yeah, that's an overgrowth of certain bacteria, and also could be a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's when the bacteria gets from your large intestine, where it's supposed to be, into your small intestine, and that could be, the underlying cause of bloatedness and gassiness.
Very, very interesting. So you work with, I know you work with people around the world. You're based in Miami.
Yes.
And you say that younger people are getting into this. Like you have influencers come to you.
Yes. And they cry in my office because they're like, why me? Because I'm doing everything right already. I'm ahead of the curve for most people. And I always try to calm them down to say that it's your mission in this life to educate others on that, because that's what helped me embrace my own health issues. Because everything I preach about, I've been through it. I've struggled with bloatedness. I've struggled with weight loss. And a couple of years ago, being a young, healthy girl who walks, her talk, I got a bad case of eczema. And it really scared me because, I had a feeling that it's coming from inside out. But you know what? It's my first time in my life. So I bought every cream that CVS had, all the steroids and all types of, creams, the topical treatments. And guess what? A month later, it came back. That's when I knew it. I was like, I knew it comes from the inside and I need to treat the root cause. And that's when I did a stool test for myself. And I diagnosed myself with parasites.
Wow.
And what really helped me is the anti-parasitic treatment that, again, not everyone needs to do, but it really helped me since then. It's been more than 2 years. Never had eczema since then.
That is unbelievable. And I know you and Brody collaborated on an article together. And, a lot of what we eat is directly linked to our mental well-being. And that was a question you had for Ella.
Yeah, it definitely was. You talked about the serotonin production and things of that. Like, so is it literally like if you just eat better, you feel better? Like you're just...
Yep. There's a lot of neuroscience research that's backing up the gut health right now, and it's all connected with the gut-brain axis, this bidirectional communication between our gut and our brain, that everything that's going on in our intestine, it affects our brain health. And that's why they see the research these days that like the mental health improvements they see when the people improve their diet, improve the fiber content and anti-inflammatory foods. And also there's a big correlation with people who struggle with depression and anxiety, who very often have low levels of serotonin. They have the manifestations of gut health issues such as IBS and cramps and abdominal pains.
What are we doing to ourselves as a society by eating all of these processed foods, fast foods, fried foods, colas, chemicals? I mean, not too long ago, I know, you can talk a little bit about your origin, but when you travel abroad, you don't see the same food dyes. You don't see the same chemicals. You don't see the same processes, and you don't see people as sick or, quite frankly, as obese.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, you notice that you travel the world and you see that, and you see how the traditions are carried out differently in Europe, that they still have farmers market in every small town, everywhere you go, and people are still celebrating the traditional way of eating off of your land. And that's why my biggest recommendations to support local farmers. Go talk to local farmers, talk to them, look at their hands, and people that make your food, that treat your food, talk to them about the practices and how they use, what kind of chemicals they use or they don't use, or ask them for recipes or how they make their own food from the food that they grow on their land. And that's really the best way to improve your gut microbiome, because everything that grows on the land that you were born in is the best food for you on your even like DNA expression level.
Like ancestrally.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you that because different cultures eat differently. Like what effect does it have? Like there's some like where we like they eat a lot of spicy food. Like how is it different in India versus like some of these South American countries that eat so differently from us? Is there like a certain way of eating that tends to inflame more? Is it just because of the processedness, or is it like the harshness of the foods?
So very often, like the foods, like the healthy foods are not the problem. It's the inflammatory food that are problematic. And that's what we see with westernization of most of the, countries in the world that are embracing the American standard diet, which is more about fast food and having fun and all this bright, colors and packaging. So very often it's not the healthy foods, it's not the spicy foods that are problem. Right. It's the fast foods that are problematic. And there's another underlying issue is stress. So the best way to create dysbiosis in your gut, to lower your immunity and feel fatigue, is to eat mindlessly, sweet foods, and feel anxiety. And it basically describes 90% of population. That's how a lot of people comfort themselves in front of a TV at the end of the stressful days. They eat something comforting. Usually it's something sweet or something that less healthier, but makes them feel good for a moment. But that's the best, like I said, the dysbiosis is created. The gut bad bacteria are thriving on sugar, mindless eating, and stress.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I had 2 back-to-back birthdays a couple of weekends ago. And I don't eat a lot of sweets or processed foods. and I was eating cake, and my daughter's making homemade cookies. And literally, I went up 4 pounds, not from fat, but from just inflammation. My body was just swole. I mean, not in a good way.
And not to mention what happened this weekend.
Oh, wait, what happened? Oh,
Yeah, what did you do?
The runny nose
oh yeah.
lowered your-
You said it could be from,
lowers your immunity.
and so what Ella was telling me is that you can eat something and then like 24 to 48 hours is when you start feeling the effects of the food. If you've eaten foods that you're sensitive to, like, gluten or sweets or lots of sugar, things like that, it will lower your immune system, which is probably why I'm not feeling so well right now and calling you Brody.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. It's like, it's amazing the direct impact that food has.
But I do want to say something about, look, birthdays happen, and I love a good cake sometimes too.
I overdid it.
But here's my, we know what, in the next day in the morning, I with kindness to my body, I create more balance, and I actually chop up a breakfast salad.
Really?
Yes, with radishes, kale, apple cider vinegar, eggs. I add eggs into my salad, and that's how I create balance. As soon as I overindulge the night before, the next morning, it's a microbiome supporting breakfast salad that's becoming popular on social media because I try to post it.
So you're saying, like, you don't want to go overboard all the time, but if you do, give yourself some grace and self-correct.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I try to fast it away. I find
Oh,
That's
yeah.
one
just let
way.
it go.
Let's talk about fasting.
Or if I've been really, really bad, I'll just skip a day entirely. Like it sucks sometimes. You get cold, maybe a little hungry, but once you're used to it, and then it's like, wow, it's almost like a reset.
I love fasting.
You do?
I do. I highly recommend intermittent fasting. But again, it has to be personalized. A lot of people, including myself, I can't fast for too long. My body views that as a stress, and I could get even worse from that. Sometimes I get cold sores, and some people get jittery hands, like their blood sugar drops very low. And it's not for everyone. So I don't know what the way you described, but 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating window, that creates, fasting, benefits without not eating for, like, some people fast for 48 hours. And that's a healthy stress that you put your body through, and it creates a process of autophagy when your body rejuvenates itself.
Yes.
There's a lot of health benefits in that, but it has to be personalized. Someone who monitors my blood sugar, and I do that for my clients, and we see that very often it doesn't work for certain people. My blood sugar drops very low.
I was going to say, how do you know, unless you're doing trial and error? You do it with a glucose monitor?
Yes, CGMs, continuous glucose monitor, to see how your body responds to it.
And you can get those at your, like, local...
No,
No,
you
you have
need a
to-
prescription. I mean,
Oh,
you
you
can
do?
you can
those little-
subscribe to some services that are companies that are like labeling those. But for my clients, to save money, and very often it's covered by insurance, you need a prescription for that from a doctor.
How does it... Or does it actually pierce the skin?
Yes,
does?
It's a small monitor with a little hair like a horse hair, like little pin that goes underneath your skin. You don't feel it. It's designed for diabetics. It's designed to be worn your whole life. That's something that you need to be wearing, and your life depends on it, because those levels of blood sugar are very important for people who are unable to produce insulin. So yes, for healthy people like you guys, I prescribe it in educational purposes, for you to start learning how your body metabolizes certain foods, and people learn quite a bit of information from them. Some people see how they might be more sensitive to fructose to glucose, meaning that we all think mangoes are healthier than croissants, but if you monitor it and you see how, if you're of European descent, where winters are long and people eat mostly, grains and dairy, they don't see a lot of tropical fruit there. And people see how when they eat tropical fruit, their blood sugar spikes through the roof. And when they eat a piece of bread, it's not as bad.
So it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, Brody, about like eating to your roots.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
I grew up in a very Italian family, and my on both sides. And my grandmother literally picked from the ground. We ate our vegetables. She'd make kakutsa soup, which is like a long root vegetable. And we would go to my uncle's farm, and my aunt had a farm, and we would go pick their backyard farms. They were pretty elaborate farms for backyard farms, but that's how we ate. And you felt good.
And that's the way I grew up as well. And that's what longevity research these days is supporting. That all of those people who live to 100 years old and more, they all live off of the land that they live on. Most of them live on an island where there's no Amazon deliveries, so they had to rely for survival on their own land. Everything you grow, you get to eat. So that kind of, creates the cycle there. And for us, we live in a society where convenience is our top priority. So not many of us are able to grow food because it takes time. It takes, a lot of effort. But that's, I grew up like this, the same way that you describe it. And, for me, this longevity research findings is not something that I read in the books. I was, I felt it. I remember the way I felt growing up. And, that's something that truly makes sense.
And it was back in a time where, like, my grandmother would cook as medicine. Like, not only would she cook to feed us, but she would cook to heal us as well.
Do you do that now?
I try to as much as possible.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it's like you go back again, one more time, to the root of the issue. And a lot of times it boils down to what we're eating.
And you know what else is great about eating off of the land is seasonality, that your food intake should depend on where you come from and what's best for your organs and for your hormones. But also your food intake should not be the same 365 days a year, because guess what? Like nothing in nature blooms, all year around. So with that, seasonality is a huge part of personalization of your diet, that you have to know where you live and eat accordingly, that every season we should be taking, advantage of seasonal foods. And that's why, again, when you take your children to farmers market, you get to experience that connection with nature, that you don't find the same lettuce, all day, every day. And maybe that's a good thing.
I love that. Do you have any other questions for Ella?
Yeah, I want to ask you, maybe this is something you could speak on. We've all heard about being hangry, right? Why do some people get so mean and irritable when they haven't eaten versus, like, because to me, as someone who fasts, it blows my mind because I have a disconnect from food in my mood. I mean, I know you say that we don't, but I'm able to like go and not be in that mode.
Not me. I get hangry.
Right.
Me
So,
too.
but some people so what is that? Is that
It's
a
the
gut thing?
blood sugar.
So it's just your blood sugar spiking.
Yes,
or
when your
not?
blood sugar drops low, that's what happens. Those are the symptoms that you have: shaky hands, that you get moody and emotional and irritable, and that's what that's what my clients get to learn when they wear their blood sugar on their tricep and they see how low their blood sugar drops. And very often, that's when your body switches into survival mode and starts to store some of the nutrients and calories instead of burning them. And that's when we need to, maybe eat something like protein foods or fiber foods to balance, or bring more balance to our blood sugar levels and to give us energy without spiking it too high and causing weight gain.
Interesting.
If I worked in your line of business, I would be obsessed.
Yeah.
I mean, with all the tools that you have and all the tools that you utilize to help people, use food to optimize their health.
Well, I am a little bit obsessed. I'm a nerd. And, the truth is, it really helped me first before anyone else. And I see it in the eyes of my clients, how they are able to change relationships with their food by changing what's on their plate and changing how they feel. And that, creates the effect on their family. And that's what my goal is, to make them the role model in their community, and impact other people.
I love it. Well, Ella, this has been an amazing conversation, and I really appreciate you being the newest member of the Bloom Health Club.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Till next time, guys.